Hi, everyone. I am Michael Hingson, your host on Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're with us wherever you happen to be. Our guest today is Lars Helgeson. Lars is up in the Washington State area and has been involved with various companies in his life, but he's also been an entrepreneur and still an entrepreneur. He's a technologist. He does a lot with CRM. And I'm not going to tell you what CRM stands for. If you don't know, he will tell you. But he's written a book called CRM For Dummies, which is kind of cool. But anyway, Lars, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
So glad to be here, Michael. This is great.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it for a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the early Lars growing up, and let's start with that.
Well, I don't think we want to go all the way back, but
sure, go as far back as you want.
Well, I grew up in Southern California, but I went to college in upstate New York and was in the Air Force for a few years, and then got out and started a company doing email marketing, and then after that, kind of branched out into CRM, as you pointed out, customer relationship management. And through that, I was connected to Wiley and Sons and wrote that yellow and black book that sometimes you'll see at Barnes and Noble. And yeah, we've sold a few copies, but CRM for Dummies was a lot of fun, and that's on Amazon and everything. So it definitely needs an update. So I'm hoping one of these years they'll reach out and have me update it, especially with a lot of the changes that have come about with AI and how that affects the sales and marketing process.
AI has to certainly help make the whole concept of CRM, well, maybe easier, maybe not, but it certainly has to help and improve some of the processes, don't you think?
It does, especially in the day-to-day, especially if you have a CRM that's able to leverage AI. One of the great things that AI can do is make sense out of a lot of different kinds of data. And, the R in CRM is relationships. And whether you're talking business or personal, relationships can be complicated. And so being able to use AI on a sales or marketing front to help a business figure out what they should be spending their time on, or how to best market to a particular segment or even to a particular individual, using AI to do that makes things more efficient. And that's really like every machine, every tool we've ever invented. The real value comes out of how do we use these tools to be more efficient at what we do. And so when we can use AI to parse through huge chunks of data and come up with something meaningful, then we can do things that allow us to scale, that allow us to reach out to people on a personal level, that allow us to focus as what we as humans do best, which is talk to other humans.
Yeah, and I mean AI offers a lot. I'm not yet convinced that AI is going to be the end all creativity tool that just creates everything and it's going to become smarter than we are. But I think that AI offers us the opportunity to use our creativity to work with AI to come up with more creative answers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we're able to say, I want to be able to create this, and then not have to rely on long timelines. And, like one of the big things is Google VO, the ability to make, and they call it slop, AI slop, but the ability to create video to communicate ideas in a way that looks realistic, that is able to have people engage or see something creative. But when you can do that for, call it, you've got these subscriptions, it might be a few $100 a month, but if you were going to try to recreate what you can do with AI in a studio, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. And you can just do it with a prompt. And once you get better at it, different ways to manipulate the AI, make it do what you want. But you're talking about being able to build video content out of your creative mind in a matter of a few hours, compared to something that would take months or years, and a budget that's way out of the scope of anything that the average person could afford.
One of my favorite examples of AI is still the fact that AI helped develop the COVID vaccinations, the Moderna vaccines and so on, that would have taken scientists years to do, using AI, they actually did it in just a few days.
Yeah, and I think once you're able to process things like the human genome and you've got the very targeted genomics, it's not too dissimilar from what we're able to do with marketing automation and sales enablement, where you can use technology to really go one to one with someone. So if you want to, if you're a salesperson trying to come up with a good message for selling your product to someone and you can feed into it, this is what we know about the person. It may be anything from their demographics, where they live, how old they are, what their interests are, things like that, combined with their actual behavior that you've tracked in the CRM. Like, have they emailed you? Have they visited your website? Have they filled out forms or surveys? And being able to use all that data and use the AI to come up with a good way to write a message to that one particular individual. It can give a salesperson some creative ideas. And if you use it with automation, then you can have the AI generate custom content on the fly for that individual, which again, it's about using tools to make things more efficient.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important for people to recognize that AI is a tool and it can be misused or used appropriately. And hopefully, in the long run, there'll be safeguards to make sure that people don't misuse it, but people are going to be people no matter what anyway.
Yep. Yep.
And that's unfortunately the way of the world.
Yeah, you end up getting, I think, sort of this swords and shields kind of thing, where AI is now able to create tools that allow people to be more easily sold to, but then people don't necessarily want to be sold by an AI. They want to feel like they're talking to a real person. And so
Right.
then people will create AIs to filter out the AIs that are coming at them, and so is there, how do you get past each other's AIs, where you've got people hiding behind their AIs and waiting, they let their AIs kind of filter out the other inquiries or, whatever into your business. And so there's always going to be this game. I remember in 2000, when I started my first company in email marketing, we had people come to us and say, hey, I want to send out a ton of spam because I know that email works. And, we were always very anti-spam, but, you would get these unscrupulous people that would come in and say, well, I have this list of people that I've been working with and they all gave me permission, and they were lying,
Yeah.
but they just wanted to send out spam to 100,000 people because they knew that would bring them business. And so you ended up again with email being used as the sword and the shield. You get the people that are like, I want to spam everybody I can. And some of them are going to want to buy my thing. And you have everybody else that's on email that says, I hate spam. I don't want junk, and then that migrates to texting, and then that migrates to social media and WhatsApp. And it's like there's always this constant game of people trying to leverage technology to do things that they wouldn't want to have done to them, but they're happy to do to other people.
Other people, yeah.
So the world is just an odd place like that.
Well, the other part about it is that, using your example, some people are going to work to get AI to get to the point where people don't recognize that it's AI and that and it really seems like a person that they're talking with. And there's going to be, as processing power increases and computers get faster and so on, there is going to be some of that. And is that really a bad thing if whoever's doing what they're doing is doing it for the right reasons and it isn't spam, but it's really selling? If they can make life more efficient by using AI, where's the real harm in that?
Right.
That's, of course, the issue, though. That's the big if.
Right. Are they using it responsibly? And how do you know the difference? How do you filter those things out? How do you prevent people from using AI for bad, from impersonating people? Because someone could take AI, listen to our voices, see our likenesses on this very podcast, and then find a way to mimic us and potentially use our identities to sell something completely different. Now, I don't think you and I are big enough names. We're not like a or a big name, where you could use them sort of as an implied endorsement, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. And what do? There's literally no way to prevent someone from recording this podcast and using our likeness
Right.
to say or do anything that they want. And so you hope that it's a certain, there's a certain amount of time or a certain safeguards in place. I would like to say I have hope for ethics or morality in the human race, but you know, I think we've seen that can be lacking a lot. And
Yeah,
so
we're not there yet.
yeah, so we just have to kind of be aware of what's out there and try to do our best to be responsible about both the usage and the consumption of content so that we don't give too much of a voice to the people that are using AI irresponsibly.
And I do presume that you're not a robot, so that's fair.
Not that I know of, although if I was, and I was programmed to not be self-aware enough, maybe I am a robot and I just don't know it.
Yeah, there's always that possibility. Maybe we all are, and there's some alien somewhere who's controlling us. And well, that's another story we can save for another day. But still, oh gosh, But I am of the opinion that technologies like AI and so on are natural progressions, but we do need to learn to use it the right way. The first time I started hearing about AI, I was at a family gathering, and somebody was complaining because kids were using AI already to write their papers. And I said, "What's wrong with that?" "Well, but the kids aren't learning. They're letting AI write the papers." And I said, "You're approaching it all wrong. Let AI write the papers, hand in the papers, and then if the teacher were smart, the teacher would take one day after the papers were all handed in and call each student up and say, 'Now defend your paper.'" And I think that's the thing to do. For me, I've used AI in helping to write, but I don't let it do all the work. I may let it come up with a number of different ideas, but then it's still my job to put it all together and come up with the final document that gets published. And I think that's the way it ought to be.
100%. And I think, in our particular area, so, I was in marketing and then CRM, and now we've kind of pivoted a little bit to patient education. And I think it's very important to understand the limits of AI and to make sure that you don't let it have unfettered access to telling you what to do and making decisions like that. So one of the things that we're very adamant about is making sure that with our patient education platform, that everything that's education based is curated so that there's no AI generated content on the fly that's being sent to someone that would give them medical advice, because there are still very high hallucination rates, and the danger of giving someone the wrong medical advice could be fatal. And it doesn't matter how great and how expensive and how well paid the engineers are that came up with the AI. The moment you rely on the AI to make a determination about either what someone should do as a result of their medical condition or determining whether or not something is worthy of being escalated to a doctor, you open up the door to an AI making a mistake that could cost someone their lives. And it's not worth it. No amount of productivity is worth an AI potentially saying, "Oh no, that infection is fine. You'll be fine," and then the person dying the next day.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're very, very cautious about with our patient-facing education platform, is to make sure that if there is ever any question, that you've got, you escalate this to a human if you feel like these conditions aren't being met, or you feel uncomfortable about anything.
Well, and the reality is humans make mistakes too, and probably more often than not. The medical world is no different than anything else, but probably it's because somebody wasn't paying appropriate attention. And again, whether it's laziness or whatever, made a misdiagnosis or made a mistake that maybe under other conditions they might not have made. And it's not to say that sometimes there's truly a misdiagnosis that nobody could catch, but by the same token, if humans can do it, AI is going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That seems to me, to be a point about it all. Well, how did you get started with your first business?
The idea was kind of a sort of a mistake.
There you go.
I was working on a web-based web page builder, and then came up with the idea for an email marketing platform. And this was back in in 1999, 2000, back when the internet was still a fad and
Yeah.
people weren't sure if it was going to be a thing. And, and there was the dot-com boom and bubble and then it burst and there was a lot of things going on back then. But I had the idea to build that basically a very preliminary, primitive email marketing platform. And of course, since we've iterated and evolved into more marketing automation and integrated with CRM and everything, but the original idea actually, and it's funny because I didn't realize until afterwards how common this was. The idea for the email marketing platform came to me in the shower, and I think I read a study once that it's like 40% of entrepreneurs' ideas, like the base fundamental idea they had for a new business or a new idea, actually comes to people in the shower. And I think the reason for that is because you're in this environment where you have nothing else to do but just enjoy the water hitting your body. And so your brain kind of relaxes and then starts thinking and spinning off in different directions. And you get these creative thoughts where, the rest of the day you're doing stuff, you're going places, you're talking to people. If you're on your computer, you're interacting with the screen or whatever you're doing. You don't have that time where your brain just stops and just sort of relaxes on its own and kind of comes up with its creative ideas. So yeah, when it hit me, I thought, that seems like that might be a thing. And then I started messing around with it. And originally people said, well, email's free. Why would I pay for email? So you have to come up again with what is the value proposition? What offer can you give? What can you give to people that's going to make them actually want to spend money on whatever it is that you're doing? So, and that was the original idea behind my first email marketing platform, which, as I said, eventually evolved into CRM and all the other things connected to it.
But going back to your question that you said people would ponder, what was it that you provided that convinced people they should spend money on this as opposed to free email?
I think there were two things. One was the ability to send a lot of emails, obviously with opt-in and not spamming people. But when you have you got a newsletter, you're a membership organization or whatever, being able to send emails to your clients or whatever, en masse, that was a big part. And the other one was the tracking, the analytics. How many people are opening it? How many people are clicking on links? What are they clicking on? Things like that. And so that gives you that feedback loop as a marketer to know what's working and what's not working.
Right. So what did you learn? Because there certainly weren't any of the safeguards and kinds of things that you have today. What kind of mistakes did you make? What did you learn from the original? That was Cooler Email, right?
That was Cooler Email. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one was, unfortunately, and I hate to say it, it was to be skeptical of people, because we had so many people that would come to us and lie about where they got their email lists from. And it was person after person of, I have this list of 100,000 people, they all opted in. And
sure they did.
Right. The first time it happened, I was like, wow, that's great, and I took people for face value. Like, oh, these are people you've done business with your business, whatever. Turns out 99% of the time, those people were lying. When we ended up having, like, when Porsche was a client, for example, of that platform, they were realistic. Porsche does have a big email list. Walmart does have a big email list, so, but when someone comes and they have their own little marketing company, they don't have 100,000 people on their list. They don't have 500,000 people on their email list. They just either scrape the web or they did something to get it unscrupulously. And so there was unfortunately, I had to learn a little bit of cynicism and not trust people. And so what we would do is we would say, okay, if you have this giant list and you're some random marketing dude that has no reason to have a list that's 500,000 people, we're going to let you send to about 1,000 and we're going to see what your complaint rate looks like. And that in and of itself would scare like almost everyone away.
Yeah.
Because they knew that it was going to come back as junk. And that wouldn't damage our reputation or whatever, even if they did it. We had a few people that actually would do it, crossing their fingers that we would never, that the numbers wouldn't come in, and they would invariably come in with high spam complaint rates and all that. So, Um, so we kind of learned how do we anticipate people, and the more upset somebody got, the more I knew that we had caught them. People that would be like, I can't believe you would do this. I'm going to go to your competitor and I'm going to spend all my money with them. And okay, go buy. Like, and the few times that someone did sneak through the net, and got past all of our safeguards, they would cancel their cards. They were stolen credit cards. They would cancel their cards the next month, and we wouldn't make any money off of them anyway. So, the number of times and the number of people that I ran into that did that was just it's a little bit disillusioning because you
Yeah.
want to think that people are good, and probably the average person is good, right? But there are a lot of bad actors out there who, unfortunately, to make a quick buck, are willing to take advantage of whoever they can.
Yeah. Do you think that the amount of people trying to pull these kinds of things has decreased any with all of the safeguards, the cookies that go into a lot of this and everything else that's out there for privacy protection and so on? Or do you think people are just continuing to work to try to find ways around it?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be that way. It's
Yeah.
always a cat and mouse game, unfortunately. There are always those people who are born and live rather than working hard to do something, they will work hard, to build something positive and creative. They will work hard to find ways to scam other people out of their hard-earned money. And
Yeah.
I have a hard time understanding that mindset because these people work awfully hard and have to know that they're targeting people who are innocent as a way to make money, basically theft and committing fraud. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around that mindset of I'm going to make my money by stealing from other people, but as opposed to I'm going to build something valuable that people will pay me for because I'm providing a good service. And it's I don't think there's any way to really understand that mindset. I don't really want to understand that
Yeah.
mindset too much, but I think you have to, as a provider of a service, you have to put yourself in the shoes of someone like that and think about how they would try to take advantage of what you have built and created as a mechanism to either use it to steal from you or to use it to steal from other people. And so, all of us have to be very careful about when we bring clients on board to make sure that they're legitimate so they don't use specifically like with a CRM, not to use our platform for evil, for phishing or God knows any other horrible things that people can do with that kind of technology.
Yeah. And there's going to always be way too much of that kind of stuff going on. And of course, that filters up or down, however you want to view it, to things like AI, because people misuse AI as well. But
Exactly.
we can only do what we can do. And I think, as you said, there are more people who are really good than not. And so it's a matter of trying to get people to work together to make sure that we do the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think back in the day, when we got the emails of the Nigerian prince that needs $1 million, and the broken English and, the awfully written email, you would look at that and be like, and no, like this is garbage. But
Yeah.
now, not that the Nigerian prince is any more legitimate, but now using AI, someone could build the Nigerian prince email and make it look legitimate and have it look like it's perfectly written English by just telling the prompt, write me something that tells me that, I'm a Nigerian prince and I need $1 million, and ask the AI to write it in a way that's convincing. And the AI doesn't know any better. It's doing what
Right.
it's and so all of a sudden, then those emails look a lot more legitimate because the AI is able to generate them in a way that makes them look that way. And, is that the AI's fault? Not really.
Mm-mm.
It's someone knowing how they can use the technology like that.
And then there's always that legitimate Nigerian prince out there, but we haven't found him yet.
Right. I'm sure there might be one.
Oh gosh. But I will say I have seen some very well put together emails and if I don't immediately recognize it, I will at least give it some thought and go, what is this? And you can usually still figure out that something is not legit, whether it's based on the email address that it comes from or who knows what. But they are getting pretty smart about the way they try to fool you with this stuff, which is really scary.
Yeah, recently I put together some content on fraud for medical practices related to our patient education
Mm,
platform because there's also a practice education that kind of goes with that. And a big part of that is recognizing when people are going to commit fraud against you and the various tools that they're going to use. And I think one of the biggest things that I read about in the prevention of fraud is talking to someone else about that. Just talking to another person about
yeah.
something reduces the chance of fraud being successful by over 70%. So
Wow.
if you get something that seems that just, something, the hair on the back of your neck, just something seems wrong, ask somebody else about it and ask them if, does this sound right to you? And that in and of itself will prevent over 70% of fraud from being successful.
Interesting statistic, but I think it makes a lot of sense to do that. And I've been very fortunate. I've done that a lot when I get emails, and sometimes I'll just delete them because they just don't make any sense.
Mhm.
They're not emails that I expect. They're not from anyone that I expect. Um, and yeah, one of the ones that I get most often is something relating to Microsoft. Oh, your subscription to Office is about to expire. You need to go in and make sure your information is correct and so on. And there are a number of reasons why I ignore all of those, not the least of which is I don't need to get any emails. My Microsoft Office subscription renews automatically every year anyway.
Yep.
But there are just so many things that people are doing. It is really unfortunate and really scary.
Hmm. Yep.
But so you did Cooler Email, and where did you go from there?
From there, I went to Green Rope, which was straight CRM, customer relationship management, where we had the sales and the email marketing kind of built in together. And then from there, we expanded to do a few other things, built in a project management system, a learning management system, a knowledge management system, survey tools, a lot of automation and reporting and everything else. So we built all that into the CRM, and then from there we branched out to do white label so that you
Mm,
can white label our platform. That's CompleteCRM.com. So the idea it's Green Rope is what we call a complete CRM, in the sense that it includes all the things that most businesses would need in their CRM. And then CompleteCRM.com is our licensing model. And then earlier this year, we pivoted to provide something that had a little bit more of a personal meaning to me. So we still do have Green Rope clients and Complete CRM licensing clients. I was actually just literally talking to one just before this we jumped on this, but the new focus really is on leveraging our technology for patient education. So modifying the platform and creating the content around helping patients and practices and providers to provide tools to help people be more healthy. And so specifically around procedures, because it's one of the things that I think every human has suffered through,
mm,
where we go to the doctor and we get a piece of paper and then we're told to go home and good luck. And specifically for me, this has resonated with me for a long time. When my mom was diagnosed with leukemia, it was the exact same thing. I mean, and you can imagine, she had her kids, like my sisters and I, to help her, but imagine being given a terminal diagnosis and given a piece of paper and told to go home and figure it out. And, if you don't have that kind of a support network around you, how do you navigate end of life? How do you figure out
yeah.
what you're supposed to do? I mean, it's just, to me, and that in some ways that may be an extreme case in a terminal diagnosis, but you go to a regular procedure done, I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so, the colonoscopy, the things you got to do to prepare for that. You have orthopedic surgeries, you've got, we're working right now with transplant and a bunch of other technologies and procedures where if someone doesn't have a caregiver or someone who's really good at navigating the healthcare system, how do you educate people to know what to do, what to expect, how to what to watch for, because most of the time we're just sent home
Yeah.
and told to figure it out. And there are a few people that have come up with different ways to address this problem, but they're all very complicated. And maybe I'm just a simple kind of a person, but what we've done is leverage our technology for automated education, and doing things with text messaging and video and some other tools, but all things that don't require an app.
Yeah.
And because people are tired of this is my dog. People are tired of downloading apps, and
Yeah.
so we want to make things as simple as possible, as usable as possible, so that patients don't feel like they're left on their own and forced to navigate a complex, confusing healthcare system on their own.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the healthcare system is confusing, and doctors are being pressured not to spend as much time with patients because you got to get more people through. It's all profit making. But the bottom line is that most all of us don't necessarily have the knowledge to deal with things. Literally a year ago today, I was diagnosed with a bad heart valve. I 20 years ago, it was discovered, but they said it may never, there's nothing we can do about it now. It may never become something that you need to worry about. Well, it did last year. And they gave me some information, but I had to ask and forced myself to ask a lot of questions to learn all the different ins and outs of what was going on. And then in March of this year, I had a TAVR's procedure. Are you familiar with TAVR?
I am not. No.
TAVR is transcatheter atrial valve replacement. So it's it is a way without open heart surgery of going in through the femoral artery and the femoral vein, going up and replacing a valve. And the operation actually is supposed to take about 2 hours. It started in 2011 with senior people, but when I asked what was the life expectancy of people after getting it, they said the problem was that most of the people who were given this back in 2011 and all that were old and didn't last long anyway. But they changed the conditions in 2017, so now other people can get it. So they expect you to have just as normal of a life as you ever would. Well, so I had mine, and again, I had to ask a lot of questions because for two reasons it was a challenge. One, they just don't necessarily give you a lot of information. And two, in my case, of course, the other aspect of it is they don't give the information necessarily in an accessible form. So I really grilled doctors not out of fear, but because I wanted to know everything I could about it. And I think that was an important thing to do. So I came out of all of it having a pretty good understanding of what they were going to do and then what they did do. And woke up and started teasing the doctors. I said, I wanted to be a doctor once, but I didn't have any patients and things like that, and got them to laugh. But by the same token, they ended up being very happy to give me any information that I needed, which was great because it was just one of those things that one has to deal with.
Right, and that's great when you're in the facility, when the doctor is there, or you've got healthcare providers that are right there. But when you go home, that's when things get more complicated.
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge. And I mean, and you said it yourself. I mean, when you're visually impaired and they give you a piece of paper that you're supposed to read, that becomes a lot harder for you both to remember all the things that were told to you, plus all the resources. It's just difficult, and especially if you're on your own. What we want to do is make resources that are available for people who are visually impaired and auditorially impaired so that they can access the same level of educational resources that someone who is not impaired has the ability to look at. Because when you look at the people, there's a study literally just came out last month that was talking about when people go to the doctor, 22% on average, and this study was done over 10 different countries. It was a lot of different procedures. 22% of patients claim that they never received aftercare instructions.
Wow.
And when you're looking at emergency care, it was close to 50%. And so you think about what that means when you're walking out of an ER and you have so much stress already, and you may or may not have a caregiver that may or may not have been paying attention. And then you go home and then you try to figure out, okay, it's been a few hours, it's been a day or two. Is this infection normal? What do I do about it? Do I have to go back to the ER? Am I changing my dressings on time? Am I taking my meds right? I mean, there's 1,000
Yeah.
questions. And so the natural instinct, of course, is people don't want to try to navigate the healthcare system again. They don't want to have to sit in another ER waiting room for another 6 or 8 or 10 hours. They don't want to try to get through to a doctor or a nurse or whatever because everyone's too busy and handling whatever's happening in front of them too. So they tend to go do their own research. They're going to go on Google. They're going to ask AI, which may or may not have all the context
Yeah.
around what happened to them, could potentially very easily lead them in the wrong direction. And so what we want to do is educate people so that they have the right information after they have their procedure done, so that they don't do their own research. So they know specifically what's normal, what's not normal. When should I call my doctor? When should I go to the ER? When should I call 911? All of those resources, and all the studies show that, and our data actually mimics the same thing that we're seeing with the studies, is you see not only just healthier patients, we've got a minimum 30% uplift in some specialties, a 60% uplift in outcomes. We're seeing, because doctors don't have to explain the same thing over and over again, we're saving about 45 minutes per day per provider. And then you also have these other elements like malpractice.
Yeah.
If patients are more healthy, they're not going to be worried about, they're not going to sue their doctor. And then, and sometimes people will say to the doctor, well, you never told me this. And maybe the doctor did or didn't, or recalls or doesn't recall. There's, does the patient have a right to sue the doctor by claiming that they never got the right instructions after their procedure?
Yeah.
And so that opens the door to malpractice, which then opens, and it's crazy. Surgeons spend 11% of their professional career in the midst of a malpractice lawsuit on average.
Gosh.
I mean, it's like 4.5 years, 5 years of their life
Yeah.
is spent dealing with malpractice. And I'm sure that's stress that they don't want. I mean, legal issues are never fun for anyone except the
No.
law. So,
Yeah.
so we want to help prevent all of those things by having healthier patients.
Well, I know that my wife was always a patient of Kaiser Permanente. And so I ended up dealing with Kaiser as well. And I will say that I've gotten better information, and I'm over in the past used other medical organizations with companies that I worked for, but I will say that I've gotten better information, and Kaiser at least has done a pretty good job of putting so much stuff online. There are still things that they need to address, and are not probably fixing things as fast as they should, or certainly as I would like. But a lot of it is done, and it was their doctors who gave me the information that I needed, and I even talked with a couple of them on the phone after the fact to make sure that I was understanding everything that had been said. But it is a challenge, and it is very stressful, as you point out, for people. And it's so easy to miss so many things that it gets to be a real problem.
Yep, exactly.
So you gotta deal with it all. What was it that got you though to decide to, as you said, pivot to go from doing just straight CRM to doing all this in the medical world?
It was more of a personal calling for me. I wanted to feel like I could make more of a direct impact on people.
Okay.
The nice thing about CRM is that it's very flexible. You can, our system is used by governments, by manufacturers, by educational institutions all across the map, right? All different kinds of industries and everything. But I always felt like I was helping other people accomplish their goals. And ever since I was young, I felt like I wanted to be able to help people more directly. And so I decided to pivot into healthcare because I felt like the technology could be used in a way that would directly impact and help people directly.
Yeah.
And so that was, and that's really been the prime motivation behind all of it, is really about how can I have a direct impact on helping people? And which is, CRM, it's great to be able to help people accomplish what they want to do, but the fact that I can use my technology to directly improve someone's health, directly, prevent them from a potential complication, and like one of the things that we build into all of our education sequences now is comorbidities. So if someone's a diabetic or someone's immunocompromised or someone has a bleeding disorder, all of those things affect the care instructions and affect the healing rates and all these other things that are impacting both prep and pre-op instruction. And so and post-op instruction. So what we want to do is really directly help on an individualized basis as much as possible people to recover as healthily as possible. And I feel like, this way I can actually have a direct impact on helping people.
Going back a little bit further, what is it that caused you to switch from doing email, where you were very successful, to going into CRM? Or was that really sort of a natural progression?
It was kind of a natural progression. A lot of it was listening to our customers. And I think a lot of this, I mean, everything I think that's successful has some element of listening to a target market and trying to understand what it is that they want. It's funny because the famously Steve Jobs, he was like, more of a build it, we will come, because
Yeah.
he had that visionary idea of no one asked for the iPhone, but when they got it, they said, this is amazing. This is something that I really want to have, and there'd been Palm Pilots and these other
Yeah.
weird technologies they were okay, but they weren't
They weren't
they
the iPhone.
they weren't the iPhone, right? So he knew he was building to some place where technology is going. But he didn't develop that in a vacuum. He saw what people were doing and the frustrations that they were having with productivity with their handheld devices. And so it wasn't that he just built the iPhone out of a dream that he had. He was listening to what the industry, the business industry and the consumer industry as a whole was doing, and saw a way to meet a demand that hadn't been created yet.
Got it.
And so I think in all ways, if you're able to listen to what people really need and provide a solution for that, then you're going to be successful. And so that was the evolution from email to CRM was about doing the same thing. What we found was the biggest challenges that businesses had was really about data integration.
Mm.
You've got marketing people that are doing marketing. You've got sales people that are doing sales. You've got customer service people that are doing customer service. You've got account executives that are managing their projects. How do you bring all that together? And so that was the idea behind Complete CRM, where if we can combine all those elements into a single platform, you don't have to hire developers to link all these different disparate pieces of software together. And
Yeah.
so that was the genesis behind moving from just an email marketing focused platform to a more integrated, holistic approach to managing your business. But and in some ways, going to patient education is kind of going another direction in the sense that we're not integrating all those different components together. We've chosen a few that are specifically focused on solving this patient education problem and trying to simplify the platform as much as we can, while still leveraging the reporting and the automation tools that we've built for the CRM. So it is an evolution. Everything that we do, obviously, in life is evolving as we
Yeah.
learn and we figure out what works and what doesn't work and everything. So like building a learning management platform into our system is something that's only used by about 5 or 10%, 5 or 6% of our clients, which is not insignificant, but not a huge part of what it is that we
Right.
sell.
Right.
An LMS, a learning management system, yeah, it could be used in the patient education platform, but really it's more for training employees and things like that. So that's not something that we're leading with our patient education platform, but it's very easy to turn back on. So when we approach a practice, we can build a learning education, learning management, a course or whatever for you, but that's not what we lead with, because it's part of the integrated approach, but not specifically towards solving that one particular problem. And so in some ways, I think being good at business and being good at providing a product or a service is about listening and listening for what they need, and then also filtering out the things that they don't, so that they're not overwhelmed with too much information, too much capability. No one wants to fly for the first time by climbing into a 747 cockpit. So you want to fly by getting into an old Cessna with really simple controls and figuring that out, and then you evolve from there.
So going back to CRMs, you've said if it isn't in the CRM, it didn't happen. What do you mean by that mindset? What does that really mean?
It really goes down to documenting your relationship. So there can be a fundamental thing with salespeople and just people in general don't want to necessarily be tracked with everything that they do, right? And there's always a little bit of this push pull where a salesperson will say, "Hey, these are my relationships. They're special. They're mine. And so I don't want you to have access to those. So I'm not going to put everything in the CRM, because now you are able to, if you fire me, you have access to all of this relationship information, and I can buy myself some job security by saying, well, if you fire me, I'm going to take my customers with me, and I'm going to, and I, every salesperson has probably done this at some point in their life. But from the business's perspective, they're saying, well, I'm paying you, salesperson. You should be bringing me leads and customers and everything. And if at some point you don't meet your numbers anymore, and if things don't work out, I don't want you to walk away with all these customers that I spent money for to acquire and paid your salary for. So you end up getting this kind of this push pull. And
Yeah.
so the whole idea of if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen, is really about convincing salespeople that it's worth their time to make sure that every element of their relationship is put into the CRM, so that they can take the most advantage of the reporting and the automation that's built around putting things in the CRM. And so it ends up, so what you try to do, I mean, humans are what they are. You try to create an incentive for them to do that. And so that's the idea. You put something in the CRM so that if you have a meeting or you have a call or you have someone fills out a form or whatever it is that they do, that somehow gets into the CRM so that you truly understand the relationship between you and this lead, and hopefully that lead becomes a client.
Well, the other aspect of it is by putting it in the CRM, assuming that it's a good CRM to begin with, there are a lot of tools and features within that product that will help you, which is, I think, what you're saying, which is why you want to have the data in there so that you can take advantage of all the tools.
Exactly. And a lot of that is reporting and automation so that you can do things more efficiently as a salesperson, close more leads, have more leads in your pipeline, things like that. And it's the same idea with healthcare.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, and a lot of that is for legal and compliance, because you need to make sure that if you tell a patient something, that is somehow reflected in their record. And partially that's because you don't want to get sued by the patient by saying, oh, he never told me that. And you can actually point to the record and say, well, no, I actually did. And part of that is just about making sure that you are following the right procedures, if you have a procedure that says when you meet with a patient after a surgery, you're going to talk to them about A, B, and C. So when they know what happened, they know what to expect when they go home, and all of that. So it's the same idea of, it's really comes down to accountability.
Yeah.
And if a doctor and a patient can be held accountable, just like a salesperson and their lead can be held accountable, just like a salesperson's manager can be held accountable. I mean, the more we're able to hold all of the people involved in a relationship accountable, the better off that relationship is going to be. And it's not necessarily about stripping you of your privacy. It's about saying, if you are going to do this, we need to make sure you actually did. And if it's expected of you to do this, for whatever reason, your sales manager may say, well, salesperson, you need to document how the meeting went just in case you get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
The in the healthcare arena, making sure that the patient was told what they were supposed to be told before they were discharged. So when they don't go home and do something inadvertently to make that could endanger their health. It's all about that shared accountability around everyone in the relationship.
And accountability is what it's really all about. I know every time I go to a doctor or anyone at the medical facility, there's an after visit report generated, and they always ask me if I want a copy of it, and I say no because I don't need to waste the paper because it's all going to be online, and it is all online, so I can go home and I can read it, and everything is there, which I find to be a very comforting sort of thing, just in case I miss something. Usually I don't, but that's me. I tend to pay attention to details, but even so, it's there. And I can go back and look at after visit reports from years ago because they're all in the record, which is the way it ought to be,
Yep.
which really makes a lot of sense. Well, so as an entrepreneur and so on, and all the things that you do, what do you think are the biggest barriers that you or other people face in growing your business?
Well, there's always a lot of them, right? I think,
Not counting AI. No, I just said that.
yeah,
That wasn't
yeah. Well, because
nice.
AI should theoretically help you break through some of those barriers.
I know. Yeah.
The it's funny, like sometimes the you've got software being a barrier, where you've got if you have a software idea, how do you build it? I taught myself how to code many, many years ago, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
everything that I have. But you can do things like, and nowadays AI is a great assistant to helping you. You can generate a lot more code and create more a lot faster with the help of AI. But you never do it blindly because AI can make mistakes and it can do things inadvertently and open up security holes and all the other things. So you got to really understand what your AI is doing. But there's also this vibe coding idea where people will sit down and they'll just tell the AI like make this thing and you can vibe code and create an app and all of that. So you end up creating, back in the day, in the early days of AI, you were generating content, so you can generate lots of long form content and blog posts and everything with AI. And then of course it floods the market and the interwebs with tons and tons of content. Now with vibe coding, you can create your own apps and you can do all kinds of things that are all fully AI generated, that can do a thing that you want it to do. But again, you still have, this security related issues and usability and everything else. So having AI as a tool to help you break down those barriers can certainly help. But in a lot of ways, when you're selling to a market or to a market segment, a lot of it is based on how well do you know that market segment and who can you talk to who can help you break down those barriers to get into the market. And so, a lot of that, in healthcare, previous to this year, I had never sold directly into healthcare. So I am learning a lot about who the gatekeepers are and how do you get past them? How do you get people to try things? Who do you talk to? Who do you ask questions of? Who do you have on a board of advisors? All of these things that are all new things to me. So, and that's my personal experience, but I think it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're not an expert in a particular field, there are going to be various different knowledge-based barriers, which again, AI can help with, but it's still going to come down to you've got product development barriers, you've got relationship barriers, you've got capital barriers. If you need to spend money on people or marketing or sales, whatever, where does that money come from?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think the challenge is I've always been bootstrapped and I didn't come from, my mom was a social worker, my dad was a teacher. So, I didn't come from money. So I had to figure out how do I build this business with my own sweat equity as opposed to relying on someone else as an outside investor. I've never taken investment money, and people come from various different schools of thought with that.
Yeah.
But, and not to say that I'm opposed to it. I just never found a good partner that would be a good either VC or PE, private equity partner. So I've been going it alone so far. And that's just sort of the path that I've taken. And so I think in all of those different approaches, you've got these barriers, and our job as the leaders of our company, as the entrepreneurs, is to figure out which of those barriers can we get past and how. So, is getting past a financial barrier alone? Is it asking friends and family for investment? Is it going to a venture capitalist? Is it applying for a grant? What are all these different ways that you can get past each particular barrier?
It's all about listening and learning
Yep.
in every sense. So, one of the things that I have the impression that with the business that you're doing now, you're really encouraging medical practices to change some of their workflows. What kind of resistance do you encounter to that, and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, no, that is a very poignant question because it is hard.
I'll bet.
People don't like change.
No. As
This
much as they talk about it and they say it's everywhere, nobody likes it.
Yeah, yeah. And you've got people that are used to doing things the way they're doing them. And so there has to be a benefit for their change. And sometimes the benefit of making, the altruistic benefit, like for what we do, making patients healthier is not enough. You can talk
Yeah.
to people about, we have this shared experience of going to get a procedure done and be given a piece of paper, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's happened to me too. I've lost the paper. I've been confused, whatever." And I really hated that. It really made me really feel scared and uncomfortable, and this would have really been helpful. And then you say, "Well, you work in medicine, so what do you think about using a platform like ours?" And then suddenly it's like, "Oh, it's something new though. I don't want to, I'm just used to doing the things I've been told to do," even though they know there's a benefit to the patient for doing it. And even though they are a patient who specifically has suffered from the same problem,
Hmm.
still going to hold on to this resistance to change simply because it is a resistance to change. So what we need to do is make it something that's valuable in a way that's kind of above and beyond that resistance. How
Hmm.
can we do this? So partly, one of the benefits of using our platform is it saves the providers a lot of time. So if the provider is the decision maker and we say we can give you 45 minutes out of your day back, because it'll save you 45 minutes a day. Any provider has that we've talked to about that has said, well, that would be really nice.
That'd be nice.
On the other side of that, there's also the fear of being sued. And so you can tell a provider, this reduces the chance of a patient suing you because they can no longer claim that they never got their aftercare instructions. And then the provider or the practice manager or the risk manager says that's something that's important because
Yeah.
that creates that it's an avoidance of stress. So it's a little bit of fear marketing, but it's really about protecting yourself. So
Does it save the money also?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
Okay.
you get fewer insurance claims. There's something called a loss claims ratio, where how much insurance is claimed versus the amount of money that they take in from their premiums and everything. And so if you've got healthier patients, the loss claims ratios are lower, so the premiums go down. So they save. So there's money savings too, and then you don't have a lot of times like getting paid by insurance for complications is very different and different rates as opposed to the original surgery. So if they're able to cut down on the complication related procedures that need to be done, then that's better for them too. So it saves them money. There's literally no upside or no downside to using our platform, to using Easy Aftercare. But you have to get past that initial.
Yeah.
If the person at the front desk says, well, I don't really want to learn a new system, but then someone up above, call it, if it's an account, a CFO, the provider themselves, whatever, says, no, I want to avoid being sued. And therefore, I'm going to use Easy Aftercare. And I don't care if that means you have to spend 5 minutes learning a new platform. You're going to do that because it's worth it to tell that person who works in the operational side of their business to learn something new. It's worth it for them to say, no, we are going to do this because it protects me. And so then the other person is required to do that. It's not up to their opinion about whether or not they feel like learning something new. The benefit to the provider and to the practice overrides that little bit of inconvenience about having to spend 5 minutes to learn a new thing.
I bet inevitably, though, the fact is that those people who resist learning it, once they do learn it, they love it because it's easier.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I literally just the chiropractor office that I go to uses our platform. They're one of our first users. And it was relatively recently because I had built out some of the stretches for people. Chiropractors, a lot of times, they'll adjust you and then they'll send you home to do stretches because that's important to make sure the adjustments that they made actually stay there. And so I was talking to the front office manager, and I asked her how it was going, and she said, "I am so excited to do this. Every time I send somebody on a patient education journey, I know they're going to get these instructions, and they're going to stretch, and they're going to come back, and they all come back and say how much they love the instructions and getting the text message and everything." And so she feels like she's in some ways kind of the hero because she's the one that sends them on the journey, that they really appreciate the instructions and everything sent to them by text. So it's kind of it's fun to see that, where she did have a little bit of the learning curve. We had to show her how to use it. It's very straightforward, but it's something new. And so now that she's doing it, she's excited to send people on these education journeys because she knows they're going to come in and thank her for that education step. And that's exciting for her. And it's so heartwarming for me to know that we've built something that creates that positive interaction between the patient and the practice.
Yeah. So you're an author, as we talked about earlier. So how do you like being an author, and what do you think will happen? Is Wiley going to come to you and ask you to update, do you think?
I hope, obviously I can't control them. I can't tell them what to do. I think it would be good for them to do that. But yeah, because AI has dramatically changed the landscape of how CRM works, and having the tools available to do that, both on a reporting and an interpretation. We built AI tools that can generate a full email newsletter in about 20 seconds, which then you go in and you can modify the whole thing, right? But
sure.
Generates the whole newsletter. We have things like hyper personalization, where you can put people on automated marketing journeys, and the AI will generate content based on everything it knows about the person. We do things like persona creation. So if you have a whole group of people in your CRM and you want to create a persona that represents them, we can do that using AI. So, I mean, there's the possibilities of what you can do with AI are incredible, you know, and so we use AI now as like a decision-making engine. So if someone's going through a journey and you need to make a decision about whether or not they should or should not do or get something, you can use AI to make that determination. And so that takes the person out of the loop and allows the AI to do that automated decision-making. And of course, like I said, you don't do this for people's mental or for their health, but where the mistake could be fatal. But you do it in marketing. It's if the AI makes the occasional mistake, it's not the end of the world if they get maybe a slightly different message or something like that. So that's really all of these AI tools together really just they create so much value and efficiency in what you do, and being able to take advantage of that with CRM is a big thing.
If people want to reach out to you, take advantage of what you're offering or whatever, how do they do that?
There's a few ways. So I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, just Lars Helgeson, and so feel free to connect with me there. Our green rope.
Just to play safe, spell Helgeson. Well, it's Lars, Lars.
Yeah, right. Helgeson is Helgeson.
Okay.
But yeah, so the website for CRM is greenrope.com. The website for the licensing of that for white labeling the platform is completecrm.com. And then the healthcare patient education platform is easyaftercare.com.
Well, I hope people will reach out. This has certainly been fascinating, and I think that makes a lot of sense, all the things that you're doing. So I want to thank you for being here and talking about it for now over an hour, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I want to thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. Well, and I want to thank all of you for listening to us or watching us, however you're doing it today. We appreciate it. I'd love to hear from you. Please email me at michaelhi, michaelhi at accessibe.com. Love to get your thoughts. Please give us a 5-star rating wherever you're encountering our podcast. But more important than a rating, please give us a review. People love to see reviews when they're considering what podcasts to monitor. And since podcasts continue to grow every day in terms of numbers, Reviews help a lot, so please do that. And if you know of anyone who might be a good guest, Lars, including you, if you know anyone that ought to be a guest, please introduce us. We're always looking for more people to come on Unstoppable Mindset. So with that, I just want to thank you again. This has been absolutely fun, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, so great to be here. Thanks again.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.